In the following exercise, you're going to start a new project with Revit, learn how to work with the Revit interface, and experiment with creating a simple building using basic walls, windows, doors, and a roof. Start Revit, and from the Recent Files window, choose New Project, and then in the New Project dialog box, you can either choose Architectural Template, or you can choose Browse just to make sure, and I'd like you to do this just once, to make sure that your default template file is coming from the US Imperial folder. That's going to ensure that you're working with feet and inches. If your template is coming from the Canada folder, you're going to be working with metric. So make sure you pick this one and pick Open. We'll pick OK and the new project will start. Now if you look in the project browser, you can see that level 1 is shown in bold, and that indicates that it's the current view. Whatever view is current, if I switch to my south elevation by double clicking, it shows in bold in the project browser. To go back to level 1, I'll just double click and we're back in this plan view. You should see 4 elevation tags that are pointing into the center of your model. So this is where you want to draw your building, inside these elevation tags. From the Architecture tab, Build Panel, I'm going to choose Wall. In my Type selector, I'm going to change this to Exterior, Brick and CMU on Metal Stud. On the Options bar, I'm going to set the height to Unconnected and use a height of 10 feet. So if I just type 10 and pick outside, that's going to assign the height. For the location line, I want to change this to Finish Face Exterior. Make sure that Chain option is selected, and now I'll be able to draw a series of continuous walls. Now I'm going to pick a point in the lower left section, not down here, but inside this area bounded by the elevation tags, and I'll just pick a point in the lower left, and then I'm going to drag my mouse up until I see those dimensions appear. And when I want to make sure that I'm working on a vertical axis, you can see the little dashed green line, and also it says vertical at my tooltip. If I move my mouse just a little bit left or right, that dashed line disappears. Then if I get close to vertical, it snaps in. Go the other way, the dashed line disappears. You want to make sure that that dashed line is visible when you're drawing horizontal or vertical segments. I'm going to draw this wall at 38 feet. Now I can just pick a point at 38, or I can just get it somewhere close in the right direction and then type 38 and hit enter. And it's going to be drawn at that length. Now I'm going to drag my mouse to the right until I see that dashed line appear again. And this time I'm just going to drag my mouse over until it's about 50 feet and then pick a point. And I don't care if it's 50 or 51 or 50'6". It doesn't really matter. It's going to be so easy to change it later. Now I'm going to drag my mouse down approximately the length of the first wall, and as soon as I get to that same length, this little tracking line appears indicating a perfect alignment with the first wall. So Revit's very clever. It will often show you little alignment lines or smart alignments indicating when things are in line with other things that you probably want to align. So I'm just going to drag this mouse down and pick a point when that line appears, and now this third wall is the same length as the first. Now I'm going to drag my mouse over to the left, and then I'm going to drag my mouse up, and then left again, and then down, and again watch that line appear. As soon as I get close to the horizontal section to the right, we get a little snap and auto alignment point appear, and then I'll pick a point, and then I'm going to drag my mouse over and pick a third point, right click and pick cancel to complete my wall perimeter. Once you've closed that perimeter, you can either hit escape to end the chain, or you can right click and pick cancel. Either will work. Now, off to the side, we're going to just create a little L-shaped segment of walls with 2 wall segments. I'm going to go back to my architecture tab, and I'll choose wall, and I just want to create a wall, and then another section, and I'll hit escape. I'll pick a point, and another point, and hit escape. The command continues, and I can right click and pick cancel to stop as well. To practice some selections, we can pick a point, press Control, pick another wall, press Control and pick another wall, and hit delete to remove those. If I pick and drag a crossing through these walls, all of them are going to be selected. Anything that I touch will be selected, and then I can delete that. This time I'm going to put a window selection. The window is crossing the top wall, but it's not completely surrounding it. It is completely surrounding the vertical segment. So when I pick a point, that's the one that's going to be selected. And we'll just pick and hit delete. So you can cancel a command when you're in the middle of a command by pressing the escape key. You can also start a command, and you can just reach over and pick modify, and that will cancel it, and also let you pick another element to change or modify. And I'll just do a little crossing here, press Control and do another crossing here to pick those up, and press delete. So that's a little bit about selection. Now for zooming, if we want to zoom around this set of walls, I'm going to type ZR, and then just pick a rectangular area around that, and it's going to fill the screen. If I want to zoom all, I can either do a ZA. If I want to zoom in a region again, I'll do a zoom region here. ZF and zoom all and zoom to fit are basically the same thing. They are both going to take you out to the extent. So ZA, turn my wheel in, ZF, and we're back out again. There's a third way, and that's to do a double click on your middle button. So if we're zoomed in here on this corner, and I just double click my middle button, that will also automatically do a zoom fit. Let's come back in here a little bit closer again. And this time we're going to add a door. So we'll go to the build panel, and I'll choose door. The size is set at 36 by 84, and that's going to be fine. I'm going to choose tag on placement so that we can add a door tag at the same time. And I'm going to move my door or cursor in here around the middle of this wall. When I move my mouse in and the door appears, I can press my space bar to change the orientation of that door to left or right. If I'm adding this door, and this is true with windows as well, if I pull my mouse in from the bottom, the door is going to protrude out or swing out in that direction. If I move my mouse in from the top, the door is going to open in. So the side of the wall that you approach with your mouse controls the direction of a door or a window. Really easy to modify it afterwards if you get it wrong, but this is how you get it where you want it while you're drawing. So I'll pull my mouse down, press my space bar so that it's swinging in on that side, and then just pick a point to place the door, and it automatically tags it. The door command is still active, and we could continue to place multiple doors by picking points at other walls. So if I want a door that swings in at the back against that wall, I just move my mouse in, pick a point. If I want another one in this corner, I'll move it in from the side of the wall where I want the door to swing, press space to get the orientation, pick a point to add and tag that door. After I've added the third door, I can just hit escape to cancel that command. escape again to get out of that process and into a regular modify tool. And now we're going to add some windows. So I'm going to go back to the build panel and choose window. We'll use a fixed 24 by 48 inch window. So I'll just reach into my type selector and change this to 24 by 48. You can see a little symbol appear in the middle of the floor plan, so I can't drop this window down. It's asking me to click on wall to place window. If I look down here at the status bar, you can see that prompt. So I'm going to zoom in here around the door, and we're going to add a window. I'm going to clear this tag on placement as well. We can add tags later. And we're going to move the mouse over the wall to the left of the front door in here. And we'll place a window here. I'll move my mouse in here, and watch, if I come in from the top side, it's going to change the direction of that window. So that's on the inside of the wall instead of the outside. If you want to see more detail, then we can change this detail level down here from coarse to medium. If you want to see it in color, which can be helpful, change this to shaded, and it gives you a better look at the model as well. I'm just going to right click and pick cancel, or hit escape to stop that command. We're going to add another couple of windows on either side here, and if I want the same type of window, I can pick an existing window, and then I can choose to create similar from this ribbon, or I can type CS for create similar. And then I can add another window here, and we'll add another window here, and then just reach up and tap escape twice to finish that operation. If I want to add some more windows on the outside of the building, we can start our window command, and then I'm going to change the size, this time to a 36 by 48. So I'll pick the size that I want. And I'm going to add 11 more windows. Let's see, where are the windows located on the plan? We'll take a look at the handout, and we have a window here, and we have a window here. There's one here, two more in this area, another one here, one around the middle, one around the washroom, 1, 2, 3, and I'm just dropping these in. We'll fine-tune the position and placement of the windows after we have them. Now with the window command still active, I canceled it already. If the window command is still active and you want to start drawing a wall, then you can just type WA, and that's immediately going to cancel the window command and start the place wall command. We're going to add some partition walls on the inside now. So I'm going to set the type selector to a basic wall. Scroll down here, we're going to find an interior 4 7/8 partition. So it's a 3.5 inch stud and 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall. And we'll just pick this. We're going to set the location line to finish face exterior. And then I'm going to start this wall at this corner and drag my mouse up. Now, if you pick that corner and it's on the wrong side or the wrong corner, space, 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 space until it goes to the right spot. And we'll just drag our mouse up and pick a point when I get to that top wall. And when I right click and pick cancel to finish, it automatically cleans up that connection between the two walls. So we'll zoom back out. We can do another wall. The command is still active. We're still set up with the same type of wall. I'm going to pick this here on the right hand side, drag my mouse up. Now here you can see this time the wall is coming up on the wrong side of the corner. So I'll just press space to get it to the correct location. Drag my mouse up. Make sure you see that little dashed line where it's going to be crooked. pick a point, and then I can just reach over and pick Modify to finish that. We're going to do another wall. Let's see, we'll do a couple of horizontal walls as well. I'll pick the existing wall, and then I'll type CS or choose Create Similar, and we're going to add another one in here. And I'll just reach up, hit Escape. The command is still active. We can do another wall across here. Hit Escape. We can do another wall here, and you can see that smart alignment? That means that this next wall is going to be in line with the one on the left. And I can pick and drag this across. Now I'll just space this up. Pick a point at the right click and cancel. And we have all of our interior walls laid out in this area. A couple more at the top. We'll add a wall here. I'll just tap Escape. We'll do another one in here, pick a point, and Escape. And our interior walls are in place. We're going to add a few interior doors as well. Now let's see, we're not going to have enough room for this one. So let's just pick this wall, and we'll move it down some. And I'll pick this window, and I'll move it down. I'm just trying to get myself enough room for another door to this room. And now we can start adding a few more doors. And this time we'll use a smaller door, 30 by 84. Now, before you say Kev, we can't use 30-inch doors on a commercial building because you can't get a wheelchair through that door. You're absolutely correct, but we're going to change that later. For now, I just wanted to get you some practice using different sizes and using the type selector. So yes, I know that it doesn't meet requirements for accessibility, but we'll change them later. Let's change this then to a 30 by 84 inch door, and then we can start adding some doors. So you approach the wall from the side where you want it to swing in, and if it's flipping in the wrong direction, press the space bar to flip it to the correct direction. And then right click and hit enter. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's all of our doors are in place. Excellent. Just right click and pick cancel. Now if we'd like to add some furniture, we can put in some furniture in a similar fashion. We'll just start the command for a component, and I'll just go to my build panel and I'll pick component. And the first component that's going to appear is a desk, and it's a 60 by 30 inch desk. Let's put in a larger one. I'll reach into my type selector and I'll change this to 72 by 36. And then I can reach my mouse in here and I'll add a desk here. When I'm adding these components, if I press my space bar, each time I press space, it rotates the component 90 degrees. And we can add another one here. And another one here. And it's going to carry at the back of the desk. So we'll add another one here. And I guess we had one in the reception area as well. We'll put one more right in the middle here. And then I'll just right click and pick cancel to get out of that command. Now we're going to add a few rooms and room tags. You can add a room by choosing Room on the Room and Area panel from the Architecture tab on the ribbon, or you can use a shortcut called RM. And if the Tag on Placement option is selected, when you pull your mouse in, you're going to see that the tag appear, and you can add one room here in the lower left. And there's another one of those smart alignment tags showing that the room tag above is in line with the one below. And then another one here, and here, and here. here, and here. One more in the middle. And then we'll just pick Modify to finish that operation. And we've added several rooms and room tags. If you want to edit the names and numbers of the rooms, then you can select a room tag or you can pick the room itself. If I pick the room tag and zoom in here, I can pick anything that's blue, remember, so I can choose the room and I can change that to office. The room is numbered at 1. If I'd like, I could change that to 101. I could change it to Bill if I want. So you can change the room numbers. And I'll go to this next one. And they're going to be numbered incrementally, so they're in order based on the point that you pick when you add them. So we have another office here. If you pick the room itself, which is highlighted by that diagonal set of lines, if I pick here and select the room, we can also access the identity data, which shows the number and the name for the room, and I'd be able to change this as well to office and apply. If I go down to the front section here, we can pick the tag. If you pick the tag itself, you don't see the identity data, but you can edit it directly. We can say that this is a reception. If you pick the room, then you access the values here through the Properties palette. This is another office. And as soon as I start typing OF, then it shows me a preview for this office. And if I just pick that, then it's going to add the name. And here we'll do another one. And I'll pick, I'll go to my identity data, and you can actually just reach into the pull down. And I can choose office here as well. So if you have several rooms that are going to use the same name, that's a quick way to add them. And here we have a washroom. And then over here on the right, we have a mechanical room. And we'll get that information in. Now the text is extending outside of the rooms, and that's just because the scale is set at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. When we change that scale to a 3/16 or to a 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, it's going to reduce the size of the room tags. If I would like to see what the square footage is in these rooms, room tags can also tell you how big the room is. Now if I pick this room and I take a look here, it shows the area is 305.39 square feet. Gives me the exact perimeter, so it's telling me all kinds of useful information about that room. If I pick one tag and I type SA, it's going to do a select all. And it gets all of the tags. Over here, my type selector, you can see that there are 8 selected. And if I change the type from room tag to room tag with area, it's also going to indicate the square footage for all of those rooms. Alright, from the Quick Access toolbar, pick your default 3D view. And here is our building. Let's change this to a shaded view. And this is what you've modeled in the last 20 minutes. 20 minutes, 25 steps, and a lot of talking. You could actually model this in about 5 minutes. But that's a pretty good effort for a very short amount of time. And that's just how slick Revit allows you to develop a building model. Just drag and drop parts and pieces and create 3D elements. Even when you're working in a plan view, you're developing a full 3D model. Alright, we're going to go back to level 1. I'll just double click to make that view active, and we're going to save this. In the following exercises, you'll explore the various methods for controlling the visibility and graphic properties for elements in different views. You'll also learn how to navigate 3D views and learn some basic methods for creating, deleting, and renaming views. Open the project that you started in Lesson 1. In the project browser, double-click on Level 1 to set it current if your 3D view is still active from the previous lesson. Type ZF to do a zoom fit, and then type ZR and define a rectangular region around your plan and zoom in. On the view control bar in the lower left area of the drawing screen, pick the scale and change it to 1/4 inch equals a foot. And when you change that scale, Revit's automatically going to redraw all of the annotation elements relative to the new view scale. Note that the elevation tags and the room tags are both smaller than they were before. Let's do a zoom fit. I'll just type ZF, and these elevation tags have changed size as well. So all of the annotation tags are linked to that scale setting. If I change this to 1/16 of an inch equals a foot, they increase in size. If I change it to 3/16 of an inch to a foot, again, they're going to be modified. Now let's do another zoom region, and we'll go into a small area where we can see an exterior wall and an interior wall at the same spot. So I'll just do ZR, and I'll come in around this corner. I'll do another ZR and come in a little bit closer. And in this area, we're going to change the scale setting and the detail level. So just beside scale, we'll leave that at 3/16 of an inch. We're going to change this detail level from coarse to medium to show those elements being hidden and displayed dependent on the detail level. All of the components that will make up for the wall will be displayed, but it's difficult to distinguish the smaller elements such as the drywall on the inside. From the Quick Access toolbar, you can enable a thin lines display. And if I choose thin lines, now I can see the drywall. And if I zoom in close enough, I can even see that the drywall on the exterior walls is a little bit thinner than the drywall for the interiors. Here we're using 1/2 inch drywall, and this must be 5/8 of an inch drywall on this partition. You can toggle the thin lines off and on as required by typing TL. And if we changed our scale enough, if I went to, say, a 1 inch equals a foot scale, and then turned my toggle off, at this large scale, 1 inch equals a foot, I can display my full line weights and still see the individual elements. If I change this back to 3/16 of an inch equals a foot, they're going to burn together and be blurred, and I can type TL to be able to see those smaller elements on screen. Now, even if I see them on screen by enabling thin lines, that doesn't mean that that's the way they're going to plot. When I plot them, those edges are going to burn together, just like they're showing here. We'll change that back. If I zoom back and pan over using my middle mouse button and my wheel, we can zoom around and zoom in on show a single office here. And then we're going to experiment with the setting again and toggle that value off and on and change our detail level from coarse to medium to fine. And most elements, you're not going to see much of a difference between the medium and the fine level of detail. And I'll just leave this at medium. Let's go to a 3D view now. I'm going to pick my default 3D view icon from my Quick Access toolbar and set our view current this way. We can also go to a 3D view from a plan view by going to the browser and looking under the 3D view category, and I can double click 3D to make that 3D view current as well. Let's zoom in. I'll do a zoom region, ZR, and we're going to zoom in around one of the front walls here. And we're going to start experimenting again with the detail level. So let's change our model graphics style this time. And I'm going to change this to a wireframe view, and then a hidden line view, and then a shaded view. We'll try the other ones. I'll set it to consistent colors, and this is going to remove the effect of the illumination. We'll change this to realistic. And depending on the speed of your graphics card, it will sometimes take a few seconds to show a realistic view. I advise against leaving realistic views or displaying textures and shadows and such, because it's going to slow down the process, and it's going to make it harder for you to change the view of your model unless you have a really good graphics card. It's better to stay in either a hidden view or a shaded view, potentially consistent colors, but don't display realistic materials or ray tracing, which is this last one, unless you have to, especially this ray tracing one. If I try changing my view, the view of my model with this ray tracing on, I have to wait until it finishes redrawing, pan the view over, wait until it smooths it out again. And really, we can just set this back to shaded, and it's going to be realistic enough for my purposes. The keyboard shortcuts to switch between the most commonly used graphic modes are WF for wireframe, HL for a hidden line view, and SD. And hidden line to SD, HL and SD for shaded. Those are probably the most useful. On the view control bar to the right of the graphics mode, there's a shadows setting, and I can turn the shadows off and on here. And we'll turn those shadows on to enable shadow display. And again, it's going to be dependent on the graphics card in your computer, how easily the shadows will work. Same as textures. If you have shared graphics memory on a small laptop, you're probably better off not displaying shadows at all. If you have a really good graphics card and it's not slowing you down at all, then you can turn shadows off and on and use them to get a more realistic appearance from your model. Let's go back to a hidden line view, and hidden line views can also display shadows. And I'll just turn that off and then go back to shaded again. Now the direction of the light is casting shadows over the front of the building when we turn those shadows on. And we can control the direction of the sun by using the sun settings. Let's just zoom back a little bit so we can see more of the front of the building. And I'm going to go to my sun settings. And if I just choose sun settings right away, it opens this little dialog box. And in the dialog box, we can specify a direction for the sun. So we can say that the sun's going to come from the top right or from the top left. And when I switch it around to the top left, now we can see the front of the building being illuminated. And we just have a little shadow in here. If I go to my graphic options and choose graphic display options, under lighting, we can control the intensity of the sun. So I can try some different values. I can increase the brightness of the sun, take this up to 75, for example, and apply. Much brighter. Now it's a sunny day. I can increase the amount of ambient light in the scene, and I can take this up to 25. You can swipe and type values, or you can use the sliders for these. And now with the ambient light setting turned up, the shadowed areas get a little bit lighter. If I turn ambient off, or increase the ambient light, it changes how much light is in the scene. So ambient light is bouncing light. And we'll take this back down to 25 and apply. And I'll drop the sun a little bit. 75 is actually going to be pretty bright. We can also change the color of the shadows or the intensity of the shadows by adjusting this slider. Reduce the effect of the shadows or intensify the effect of the shadows. I'll take this back down to about 25 or 30 to get some light shadows. I'll close my lighting and we'll look under the model display and take a look at the silhouette settings as well. The silhouette style is currently set to none. If I change the silhouette to a wide line and then pick OK, I'll need to turn my thin line display off. If the thin lines are on, you're not going to see the effect of the silhouettes. If I turn that off, these are the silhouette edges that we have assigned as wide lines. And I'll just go back in to graphic display options, and I can set that back to none to remove that silhouette effect. If I go to the background section, background, we can enable a gradient fill for the background. And if I change this to a gradient, I can choose different colors for the sky and the horizon and the ground. And if I apply this and then zoom back and rotate my view, there's the ground planes down there, and then the horizon, and then if I look up, you can see the color of the sky. So those three colors, between the blue and the gray and the white, those are the colors that we see in our graphic display options under background right here, our sky color, horizon, and ground color. And this can be set to display a sky as well. And here's our blue sky. And the sky color and intensity is also going to be related to the time of day and the lighting. Let's go back into our graphic display options and background. And I can choose a picture as well, and that would be an image file of the sky. And I'll just set our background back to none and apply to get the default white color. Let's go to our sun icon and turn our sun path on. You can try experimenting with the sun settings a little further. If I turn my sun path on, you're probably going to get this warning dialog saying that the sun path is not initially being displayed because relative to view is selected in sun settings. If I just cancel there and we take a look in our graphic display options and lighting, this is set to sunlight from top left and relative to view. When I go into my sun path, if I turn my sun path off and bring it back on, here's that same warning. And I'm just going to say we'll use the specified project location, date, and time, and that will clear the relative to view. And that's going to allow me to see the compass rose here and all of my sun settings. If I pick on the arc and drag this, I can change the date. So I've just changed this to March. If I pick and drag, I can take this over to May or June. Or January, it's snapped back. February. And we can change the date directly by clicking in here. And I can choose another date, June 7th. What's June 7th, people? Kevin's birthday, that's right. Send me a card. Now, if I want to change the time for the sun, I can pick right on the sun and I can drag this around to change the direction and the time of day. And because we have a lot of ambient light in our scene, the shadowed areas are still fairly bright. If I want to adjust that, I can go back into my graphic display options, go back to my lighting, and I can drop the sunlight and the ambient light and make the shadows a little bit darker. Click on the sun and change the time by dragging it. So we pick and then pick again to drag it around to 7:45 a.m. And we can change this to 9:45. You can just pick in that blue text and change the values to adjust the sun as well. All right, let's do a zoom fit and zoom in and out with our wheel. ZF to go back out. When you're happy with the sun location or the sun direction, let's see, we're going to use a southeast, 9:45 on my birthday. That sounds great. Then I can turn that path off. And just because the path is off doesn't mean that the sun has changed. It's still on. If we turn this on and go into our sun settings, here's where we can change the date and also the location. And I can change this by an internet mapping service or by a city list. And I'll choose my city list here. There we go. And change this to Alameda, California, and pick OK. And now we're set up for a building on a site in California. Okay, let's see, what's next? Silhouette edges, we've turned those back off. All right, let's do a custom view and a render. I'm going to zoom in here on one of these desks, get this in our view, and we're going to open up our render tool and take a look at that. If I go to a 3D view, I see a little teapot appear on my view control bar that will allow me to show the rendering dialog. And when you show the rendering dialog, you can start a render right away, or you can change the render type. If I just changed my quality here to medium, and we'll leave this at the metal ray rendering engine and then pick render. First the viewport turns black and we see some little rectangles bouncing around, and then it redraws the view, and there's my medium quality NVIDIA metal ray rendering, and you can actually see the color of the desk on the wall behind here, and that's called a color bleed, and that's the effect that you'll get when light bounces off a colored surface and then reflects up to another surface. It's very realistic and helps to make the renderings more believable. At the bottom here, I can choose to show the model and show the rendering. I can toggle these back and forth. And if I choose to save to project, I can give this a name as well. Let's try another render. I'm going to change this to an Autodesk Ray Tracer rendering, and we'll do a medium render. We're going to use the screen resolution, relatively low. We'll leave the sun settings at exterior sun only, and I'm going to do a new render. Now, progress bar is just off the screen. I'll just move this down. And there's our new render with the ray trace option. Now if I'd like to save this, I can save it to a project. And we'll say that this is 3D test render 1 or 3D desk render. It doesn't really matter. Something that's descriptive that's going to help you understand what that is in the browser. And then I'll pick OK. We can also export this. And if I export it, it's going to allow me to choose a location and a name for the file. So this is going to my lesson 2 folder, and I could give this a name and say that this is my 3D desk render demo or render test, and export this image in that fashion. And let's see, we'll go back to our floor plan view. I'll close my render dialog, and then I'll switch to a floor plan. And because I've saved that rendering, I can go to my render category and I can double click here to restore that rendering. Let's go back into our level 1. And we'll look at some visibility graphics settings now and some how to hide elements. I'll do a zoom fit by typing ZF. And you've probably noticed by now that when we do a zoom fit, it doesn't zoom around just the building. It also zooms out to show these elevation tags as well. Now, if I zoom in on one of these tags, you're going to see that there are 2 parts to it. If I pick this little triangle, a line appears, and that indicates the defining location for the west elevation view, right here. The Properties palette is going to show a description of the view. It's a building elevation. It's set at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. If I come down a little further, the view name is called West. So all of those properties are being displayed. If I click here, here's the defining location for my south elevation, and you can see it's called a south view. It's set up to be 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. It's using a coarse detail level. So all of those settings are being displayed. If you double click the little triangle, it will actually set that view current. So this is actually set our west elevation view. If I come back to level 1, if I go to the little triangle here on my south elevation and double click, it'll show the south side view. And I'll come back to level 1 again. Now if I zoom in a little further, and I float my mouse over the rectangular portion and pick this, it just says building elevation. And if I choose to edit type, it just tells me that it's an elevation tag, it's a 1/2 inch square shape, it has a callout tag associated with it, and I'll pick OK. Now my point is that this and this are separate elements. And if you want to move them or adjust them, and what I'd like to do is get them closer to the building, you need to select both elements. If I pick this triangle and I start dragging, I'm dragging the actual elevation line. If I drag this over here, that elevation is going to become a section view. It's going to cut through the building at that point. If I pick this little rectangle and I drag this around and pick the triangle, the defining line for my view is still back here, and these should stay together. So I can pick the triangle and it changes the defining location, but it doesn't move the tag. If I pick the tag, it moves the triangle and the rectangle, but it hasn't affected this defining location. I want to keep them together. So if I pick this and then pick on the line itself, I can drag these around so that they are together. Now if I pick my elevation tag, I've pulled them apart. If I want to get them together, pick the triangle, drag the defining line over. If I want to move these together, I'll select them with a window, pick and drag, that's got the defining line at the right location. Window them, move this in next to the building, and they're moved together and the defining line is in the correct location. So don't tear them apart. Keep them together by window selecting them. And yes, you should move them relatively close to your building. They don't have to be against it. But if you move them in closer to your building, like this, when you do a zoom fit, it's going to zoom in a lot closer to your actual building, so it's more useful. On the view control bar, choose crop region here, and then show crop region here, and you're going to see a rectangular frame appear around your building and your elevation tags. If this rectangular frame for cropping the region is inside where the elevation tag is, then it's going to hide those elevation tags. If I pull this in and pull this one down, it's going to reduce the size, and now if I do a zoom fit, it's going to zoom to that area. So it's going to show the extents of the model based on the crop region and any annotation elements. Let's just turn that cropping back off. I'll say do not crop view, and I'll hide the crop region, and then just do another zoom fit. And this time it's going to show in a larger area. If I pick crop view and then zoom fit, it's going to go in a little closer. So we'll turn our crop back off again. Crop views may also be used to enlarge a specific area of a drawing, and if we wanted to work on only the entrance area of the building at an enlarged view, we could crop a view to focus on that section and then hide the rest of the plan. In the project browser, right-click on the Level 1 heading and choose Duplicate View. So I'll choose Level 1, right-click, Duplicate, like this. And now I have Level 1 and I have another view called Level 1 Copy 1. And the copied view is now current, and you're not seeing any of the room tags or the door tags. Let's just delete this. I'll right-click and choose Delete, and it goes back to my previous view. This time I'm going to right-click and I'll choose Duplicate View, but I'll duplicate this second one with detailing. And when I duplicate with detailing, this time it has retained all of the annotation elements as well. I'm going to turn on the crop view or the crop region, and I'll crop this, and then I'm going to pull my crop region in, so it's displaying just the office in the lower right. And if I zoom in a little further, you can see that some of the annotation elements that are outside of this crop region are still being displayed. If I select my crop region and I turn on an annotation crop, you can see a second frame. And this second frame is the annotation crop frame. If I turn on the annotation crop frame and then I reduce it, and I pull this in, as soon as I pull this inside those other annotations for the room tags, they're going to be hidden as well. If I select this view and I turn off the annotation cropping, if the annotation crop is not on, then annotation elements are going to be displayed even when the model elements are being correctly truncated. So I'll just turn the annotation crop on as well, and then we'll zoom in a little bit further and we can take a look at some of the other options for our tags. We're going to change the graphics scale setting, and I'll change this to 3/8 of an inch equals a foot for this enlarged view. And if I zoom in a little closer, that's going to reduce the size of the annotation elements. We can do an HL to switch this to a hidden line view, or SD to shade the view. And because we copied this view with detailing, all of these door tags were copied as well as the room tags. Now we can hide one or more elements of any category a number of different ways. If you pick one of the door tags here, and then choose right-click, hide in view, element, it's going to hide that one door tag, but the other one is still visible. From the view control bar, if I choose to reveal hidden elements, it shows the one tag that we've hidden in a red color. This indicates that it's been permanently hidden and it's not going to be plotted. If I turn off my reveal hidden elements, it's going to be hidden again. This time I'm going to choose a second door tag, and I'm going to right-click and choose hide in view by category. And when you hide an element in a category of elements, all of the door tags are going to be hidden. If I choose the reveal hidden elements, I see both of these elements that have been hidden. This one has been hidden as an element. Both of them have been hidden as a category. I'll toggle that reveal back off. I'm going to pick one of these door tags, and if you're having trouble selecting, just press the Tab key until it highlights the object that you want to select. And then I'm going to select one tag, and I'll right-click and I'll choose Unhide in View by category. If I turn my Reveal Hidden Elements off, one of them has been brought back but not the other. If I choose Reveal Hidden Elements again, and I want to bring this one back as well, then I'm going to do a Tab Select, right-click, and choose Unhide in View by Element. And then when I turn that Reveal option off, I see all of the door tags again. If I want to hide both of them by category, I can also do this by Visibility Graphics. If I go into VG and then go to my annotation categories, I can turn off the display of door tags and pick Apply and OK, and that's going to hide them in this view. If I choose to reveal hidden elements this time, we can still see them. So that's access the visibility graphic overrides by selecting objects or by using the dialog box. Let's go to a 3D view now. I'm going to go to my browser and I'll double click on 3D. and switching to my default 3D view. And then I'm going to use my view cube here to switch to different directions on the view cube. We can orbit our view by clicking and dragging on the view cube. We can also orbit the view by clicking and dragging with our middle mouse button pressed and holding our shift key. If you select an object, such as this door, and then you press the shift key and rotate, that's going to occupy the center of the view. If you just zoom in on this corner of the building and you do an orbit by pressing shift, you can see it jumps away. But if I select something in my view in this area and press the shift key and rotate my view, it's going to rotate around that center point. If I'm using a view cube or a steering wheel, then I can set the center point on a particular location. So if I open up my view object wheel and then I move the center to that corner, when I orbit, let's move that center right here, there it is, and now when I orbit, I can orbit around that point. If I want to orbit on the desk, I can center and then place a center point on the desk, and then when I orbit, it will orbit around that point. If I just pick the desk and press shift and orbit with my middle button, it's also going to orbit around that object. Now let's experiment with some hide and isolate options. If you select one of the desks, I'll just zoom back a little bit and I'll pick one of these desks, and then I'm going to go to my temporary hide isolate tools and I'll choose to isolate element. The selected object is now being displayed by itself. If I zoom in or out, I can isolate that object and work on it. If I want to see the rest of the elements, I can choose Reveal Hidden Elements, and they're going to be displayed in cyan. And I'll just toggle that Reveal option off. And then I can reset this by going back to my Temporary Hide and Isolate and choose Reset, Temporary Hide Isolate. Now I'm going to pick one of the exterior walls, so I'll just zoom this up, and if I wanted to remove a single wall, I can select this wall, and I can right-click and choose to hide in view by element. Or if I want to do this temporarily, I'll use my temporary hide isolate and choose hide element, and that lets me look into the building. And I'll reset that. If I move my mouse over one of these exterior walls, and when it highlights I press tab and then pick, it's going to get all of the exterior walls in a single step. Now I'm going to override the graphics in view by element for those selected objects. If I right-click and choose Override Graphics in View by Element, I can go to my surface transparency and set a transparency value of 50% and apply and OK. Turn my shadows off, and these are our transparent walls that we can see through now. If I want to hide my windows or doors, I can remove those, so I'll pick a window and I'm going to right click and choose to hide in view by category, and all of the windows are going to be hidden. If I pick one of the exterior doors and then I type SA, it's going to find the other exterior doors as well. There are different types than the interior doors, so they're going to be selected separately. And then I can right click and choose Hide in View by Element, and those objects are going to be hidden. And now that I have this set up with a particular viewing style, We've set this to be transparent. We've hidden the doors and windows. We've set up a few overrides. If I'd like, I can save this and give it a name. And I'm going to right click on the view cube and choose Save View. And I'm going to call this Southwest-ISO-transparent, just to describe what's happening in this view. And I'll pick OK. You can see that name has now appeared in my browser. Alright, let's go back to our default 3D view. With our 3D view current, we're going to experiment with the steering wheel. So I'm going to go to my steering wheel options, and I'm going to orbit this view around until we can see the back of the building. And I'm going to zoom in. We'll pull our center point down here around the corner and orbit a little bit more. And I'll orbit down from the top and pan this view a little bit and zoom in. And we just want to experiment with the steering wheel a bit. And then I'm going to close my steering wheel. And we're going to make a couple more changes. Let's see, I'm going to select a desk and hide in view by category. And that's going to hide all of our furniture. And now let's create some visibility graphic overrides on selected elements. So I'll pick one of the exterior walls and then type SA to select all of them. And then I'm going to right click and choose to override graphics in view by element. And we're going to make a few changes. We'll go to the surface patterns, and in the surface pattern and color we're going to first change the pattern to a gypsum plaster pattern. And then we're going to choose the color button, and I'm going to pick this salmon color in the upper left and pick OK, and then apply and OK again. And here's our stucco appearance in this hidden line view. Now I'm going to pick my steering wheel and drag this into the view again. And the steering wheel gives you the option to save views as well. Just like you can right-click on a view cube, you can also right-click on a steering wheel and choose to save a view with a name. And so we're going to call this view Northwest Stucco Walls. Northwest _ stucco walls. And I'll pick OK. And now we've created another view. So we have our default 3D view back here. We have our Southwest ISO transparent here. And we have our Northwest stucco walls here. So we've experimented with a few different options for creating views. Now let's go to the level 1 view again. And we're going to use one more visibility graphic overrides. And I'll just open this by typing VG. We'll go to the annotation categories, and I'm going to hide those elevation tags. And I'll just clear that and apply and OK. And now if I do a zoom fit, our floor plan fills the screen, and we don't need to see those elevation tags anyway. Alright, that's as far as we're going to go for today's lesson. You can save your file again, and in tomorrow's class we're going to start setting the sizes correctly for our building. We'll do some dimensions and constraints. We'll look at methods for selecting and manipulating content, and also how to use some of the editing tools on the modify bar. So we'll see you back here tomorrow for that one. Have a good break. In the following exercise, you'll learn how to apply dimensions and constraints to your preliminary model to practice how to define relationships between elements. You'll also practice manipulating elements with various editing tools and control features. Open the project that you were working on in the previous lesson. If Level 1 is not active, double-click Level 1 in the project browser to make it current. Then type ZF to do a zoom to fit. We're going to start by defining the overall dimensions for the building footprint and then locking them. From the Quick Access toolbar, select the Dimension tool. On the Options bar, select Wall Faces and pick Individual References. Select the face of the brick component on the lower wall. You might need to zoom in, and you want to make sure that you select the face of the brick and not the sill element on the outside. So I'll choose my brick face, and then I'll zoom back And I'll pan in towards the top and select the corresponding face here. And then I'll zoom back again and I'll pick a location for my dimension. After you place the dimension value will appear in blue, and a padlock icon will appear below the dimension. The dimension value should be 38 feet, but if not, then you can select one of the two walls that you've just dimensioned and change that value. I'm going to select my front wall and then change this to 38, and I hit enter, and it pulls that front wall up. If I select the front wall again, the dimensions will highlight in blue. We have a dimension text here on the permanent dimension, and there's a temporary dimension that is being displayed as well. If I select this dimension and change it to 42, the selected wall moves down, the square footage for the office has increased. I'll select that front wall again, and this time I'm going to change the dimension to 39 feet. And again, that wall will move up, and you can see the square footage in the office has been modified. When a dimension runs between two objects, and you change the dimension value, the selected element will be the one that moves to reflect that new distance. Hit Escape twice to clear the dimension selection, and pick the other wall at the back of the building. The same dimension highlights, but if I change the value this time by picking and typing in 44, this time the front office has not changed size, the back wall moved, and the offices along the back have increased in size. If I change this to 42 feet, it pulls that wall back down. So whichever one you select is the one that's going to move. When you add a dimension lock icon will appear, and this allows you to lock that dimension value right away if you need to. If you want to manipulate the dimensioned element, as we've just done, to move it to the correct distance, the lock will not appear until you select the dimension. With the wall still highlighted, pick the dimension to switch to that selection, and then pick the lock icon below the dimension to toggle it on and lock that value at 42 feet. Now I can pick the dimensioned wall at the back of the building, and the only dimension that we see is a temporary dimension here on the far right, showing a dimension from the back wall to this middle wall. If you don't see any dimensions, check for an Activate Dimensions icon on the options bar. That normally only appears when multiple objects are selected. Here it is now. And if I choose Activate Dimensions, it shows all of the dimensions that are modifiable for those elements. We're going to add a second dimension between the inner face of the front wall and the closest face on the wall at the north side of the office. So I'm going to zoom in to this area, and we'll add a dimension to the office here, and then I'll just pick a point to set that location. I'm going to select the front wall of the building, and then select this dimension for the office, and change this to 16. Now when I do so, the front wall moved back to make that dimension 16 feet, but the wall at the back of the building actually shifted as well. If I zoom back a little bit further and I set this to 18, you can see that the entire 42-foot wall is being maintained, and the front wall is shifting up because it's the one that's selected, and the back wall is moving because it has to maintain this 42-foot relationship. If I change this back to 16, again, this will pull that front wall up. We're going to add a third dimension now between the front exterior wall and this inset exterior wall containing the front door. So we'll do another dimension from this face to this face, and I'm just going to pick a point in here and then pick outside. Now if we'd like to maintain the 16-foot office, but we also want to change the dimension here by the front door to 8 feet, then you have to remember that the wall that you select is the one that's going to change or be moved. If I pick this wall at the front of the building, I can change this to 8 feet, but it's also going to change the office dimension. So if I want the inset distance to change to 8 feet without modifying the office value, I pick this inset wall, set this dimension to 8 feet, and then it shifts in without affecting the office dimension. Now if I undo, we'll just illustrate how that can go wrong if you pick the incorrect wall. And if I select this front wall again, and this time I change this distance to 8, that goes to 8 feet, but we've lost the dimension here on our office. That's okay. I'll pick this and I'll change this to 16 again. And now we lose the dimension here. So you need to just remember to pick the right wall or use locks as required. If I lock this dimension and now pick this front wall and I zoom back a little bit so that you can see what happens, now I can change this 16-foot dimension here. But when I do so, in order for that front wall to move up, almost the entire plan has to move up as well. This wall moves, the back wall moves, this wall moves, and then the interior walls stay in the same place. What would be a better way to do it? Well, pick the interior wall and change this to 16 instead and have it shift down. Just remember that the one that you pick is the one that's going to move when you change the value. At this point, if you're moving these dimensions around or moving the walls around, it's possible that you can create a conflict. And if you get a warning message while you're doing this, which can occur if a wall goes into an opening like this, if I drag this down or adjust the dimension value such that the ends of that wall would go into the door opening, I'll get a warning letting me know that an insert conflicts with a joined wall. And I can either cancel and move that back, or I can move the element that's causing the conflict. If I have moved this wall and it goes back and runs into a window, or if I move if I move this window here, again, it's going to give me an insert conflicts error. And I'll just pull that back down. We're going to take a look at the flip controls now. And we're going to look at the windows. And I just want to scan around and make sure that all of the windows are positioned correctly. If you pick a window and press the space bar, you can reverse it. You can also use the flip grips to change the orientation and shift this in and out. So we're just going to come around. Here's one on the wrong side. And I'll just press my space bar to flip it. And we'll scan around. Good, good, good. Here's one that's inside out. So I'll just pick it, press the space bar to flip it out. If I pick a door to an office, we can also change the orientation of our door with the flip grips. And we can flip it in and out. And we can change the hinge side. You can also press the space bar to rotate through the 4 possible configurations for that door. Now that the door is coming into the office, we're going to zoom in a little bit more closely. And if we check this dimension here, you can see that the dimension from the interface of the wall to the face of the opening is 3 3/8. And I want to change that to 4 inches. So I'll just pick 4, type that 4, and pull that out. Now, this dimension is showing a second value down here, the 8'2" down to the center line of that next wall. So I'm going to create a permanent dimension here to create a relationship, a 4-inch offset distance from the door to the inside corner of the wall. And then I'm going to create a constraint by making a permanent dimension and then deleting it. I'll type DI, and I'll pick from here to here, and I'll pick a point, and I'll lock that. And at this point, if I were to move this wall and bring this down, say to 14 feet, because we've added that constraint between the door and the wall, it has to move with it. And we can take this to 15, the door maintains the 4-inch distance, set it to 16, and it still maintains that value. If I don't need to see that little dimension, but I want that offset to remain, then I can delete the dimension, and I'll get a little warning letting me know that a dimension with a lock or equal constraints is being deleted, but the constraint is going to remain. If I want to get rid of the constraint, then I can pick this button. If I want to keep it but not see the dimension, then I'll just pick OK. And now I can change this value and pull this up and down, and the door is still going to move with it. If I select the wall, or if I select the door, you can see this icon that's indicating the locked constraint. And we also see these dashed lines indicating a constraint. If I enable my Reveal Constraints toggle on the status bar here, it will actually show that dimension as well. And you can move it, or unlock it, or delete it. And I'll toggle that back off. So far, our building has been able to shift its exterior walls to reposition or resize the building perimeter without regard to a fixed location. And if you'd like to lock your building down at one point, then you can use a pin to do so. I can go to the Modify tool or Modify panel on my ribbon and choose Pin, and then pick an object, pick a wall to pin, and then choose Finish Selection, and I can add the pin that way. You can also create a pin by selecting the object that you want to pin down and then picking the pin icon. So either of these methods will work. If you want to get rid of a pin, you can just pick it and then clear that selection. If you want to get rid of the little pin icon altogether, you can try pinning it and then unpinning, but if it doesn't hide the icon, you can remove that icon by deleting the wall and then undoing the delete. So if I hit delete and then I do a Control Z, it brings it back, but it removes that pin icon. Or you can just leave it. It doesn't really hurt anything. No symbols will appear when an object is pinned. A pin is different from a constraint. So if I choose Reveal Constraints, it's not showing any indication about that pin. I see a 42-foot dimension that's locked, an 8-foot dimension, a 4-inch offset here, but nothing about the pin. And a pin is just a little bit different than an actual constraint. Now we're going to zoom in around the front of the building on the left side, and we're going to add a dimension from the outer face to the middle of the window to the outer face. So I'll go to my dimension and go from here to here to here and pick a point down below. And we're going to choose the equality symbol, make this an equal dimension. And the window, if it's not in the middle, when you started, it's going to reposition into the middle of that wall. Now we're going to add another dimension to show the overall length of the wall that's hosting that window. So I'll go back to my dimension tool, and we'll add another dimension here. And we have a width of 17 feet. Or we want 17 feet, actually. We have a dimension of 20, that's 17, right? 20. Now we're going to pick this wall, and I'm going to change this value to 15. And it pulls the wall in, but maintains that window being in the center. If I change it to 17, again the wall or the window is going to stay in the middle of that wall. It's forced into that location because of our equal constraint. Now we're going to zoom back a little bit, and I'm going to pick this last dimension and choose to edit witness lines. And I'm going to add a witness line here and add another witness line over here, and then pick a point to finish that operation. Now I'm going to pick the equality symbol, and it's going to shift everything over so that the 3 sections of the wall are now the same distance. So we have 2 sets of equal constraints. We're going to do another overall dimension. So I'll go back to my dimension, and I'll pick from here to here, and pick a point at the bottom. And we have 50 feet. If I select a wall on the right side of the building, I can change that 50 feet and make it 58 feet. And we're getting a warning about a room, and as we're experimenting and making some changes here, it's telling me that multiple rooms are in the same enclosed region. And if I pick Show and Close, here we are. Because of that drastic change, we've actually pulled the washroom into the office. And I'm going to add that room again later. I'm just going to pick delete room for now, and then we can recreate it. I'm going to pick this wall, and let's undo. I'll get my 58 feet back a little bit by doing Control Z, and we're down to 50 feet, and now we've got our rooms back again. And let's try a less drastic change, and we'll see if we can set it to 54 feet. And at 54 feet, we didn't get the room error, so we kept our washroom in place. We'll change it again to 52, and everything keeps shifting around. So our windows in the middle of the wall, the three sections of wall are all the same dimensions. We need another equality constraint here in this location as well, and we can do that by adding a dimension from here to here to here, and then just making it equal, and it shifts that window over. After using the equality constraints, once you've locked things into position and they're the correct size, you can change the display of the equality value, and if you actually want to see the distances here, you can select this and choose to show the values instead. And I can pick here and change equality text to value. And we can also remove some of these dimensions by editing and changing the witness lines. If I choose Edit Witness Line, and then pick here and pick outside, then it's going to keep this window so that it's constrained. The equality constraint is still existing even though the dimension has been removed. If I select this and I try to move that window over, it's going to give me a warning. And I could either remove constraints if I really want it offset, or I can cancel to let it shift back into the middle. If you remove equality constraints and you want to keep those elements from moving, you can also lock the dimensions by picking them and toggling the lock icons. Let's do another set of equality constraints between the front door and the two adjacent windows and the adjacent exterior wall faces. Now when you do this, these aren't bad. Sometimes you want to sort of move them into roughly the correct position first and then add your dimensions. We'll do another dimension here from the inner face to here, to here, 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 and then make this equal, and it just pulls everything around. I'm going to pick this dimension and move it over a little bit next to the building. And again, if we want to change this to a value, and if we want to remove one of the dimensions, then we can choose Edit Witness Line, and this lets us hide one of the dimensions. All right, let's add an alignment now between the two front sections of the building. And I'm going to create an alignment between this face, what I'm happy with, this is where I want it, and I'm going to pull this one up to be in line with it. So I'll go to my Align tool, and I'll pick this one, and then I'll pick the corresponding brick face on this side, and pull those up, and I'm going to lock this to say that I want to keep it there. And then I can just pick Modify to finish. Another useful place to create alignments is between the faces of interior walls and exterior walls, such as this intersection here. So if you want to make sure that this doesn't happen and you don't offset this, you want to keep this in line, we can use an align from here to here. And we can lock those together, so if the width of the building changes, this is going to move with it. Or we can just use the align command to pull them together, but not necessarily create that lock. And I'm going to lock this one. And then we can do the same thing on this side. Now, you don't have to move these off alignment. You can create the alignment even if they already are in alignment, just to create a lock between them. So I can choose lock this face, and then just pick that lock icon. And now, if the width of this inset bay changes and increases, these walls are surely going to move to adjust and follow that. We can add a few more dimensions in here, and we can go around to the interior doors and set these so that they're all going to be 4 inches from the opening. And we'll just do a dimension here to here. And then I'm going to set the value to 4 inches. And if I want to make sure that it stays at 4 inches, I can lock this and delete the dimension and pick OK. I can pick here, bring this over, set this to 4 inches, and then I can add my dimension, lock it, and delete it and pick OK to lock those to the walls. We'll do another one here, DI, here to here. I'll pick my dimension and change this to 4 inches. And then I'm going to pick it and lock it, pick it and delete it, and pick OK. Here we're going to move this into the middle of the wall. And I'll do this by adding a dimension and making it equal. And then I can delete this dimension, but I'll maintain that equality constraint. So we're adding several constraints and actually hiding the constraint symbols. If you'd like to see them, you can choose your Reveal Constraints icon, and that's going to show you the constraints that you've created. Alright, so we have some alignments and some 4-inch offsets. You can continue adding the rest of the dimensions, and I'm just going to clear here. Again, if you have a series of dimensions going from the front of the building to the back, you're going to start them at one end and then move the elements, move this one, all the way up. So if I do a dimension string from here to here to here to here to here, here and here, and then pick a point. Some of these dimensions you can't change. The 3-foot dimension, if we pick the window, the 3-foot dimension is defined by the actual window family, so you can't change that. But we can change this, and we can shift this dimension to push this window up 9 feet from the front. And then we could select the next window and say that that's another 9 feet. And we can select the next window and say that we have 4 feet between them. And we want to make sure that our dimensions aren't showing weird fractions. So just go through, leave the final dimension out on a string. We can pull these in a little bit closer to the building, like this. And we want to try to keep these dimensions aligned. And Revit is clever enough that if you pull strings in line with other strings, it's going to create those little smart alignment axes to help you perfect those. Alright, I'll let you finish adding the rest of the dimensions on your own. Dimension all of the windows, make it match the handout, and then save and close your project file. Don't forget to back it up to a removable disk, just for safekeeping. And we'll continue with this project in the next lesson. And in lesson 4, we're going to start working on some sketched features, and we'll add some floors. We're also going to be looking at bringing in custom families. So we'll be doing that in the next lesson. Have a good break, and we'll see you back here for number 4. In the following exercise, you're going to practice modifying element type and instance parameters, define new types for existing families, and load new families into your project. You'll also be introduced to sketch-based features and working within the sketch environment. Open the project you've been developing in the previous classes. Set level 1 active, and then do a zoom fit to take a look at your building. At this point, all of the walls should be dimensioned and all exterior openings should be dimensioned and constrained. The interior doors should be set up to maintain a 4-inch offset from the inside corners. Zoom into the large office up in the upper left corner of the plan. Move your cursor around the room And when the large X highlights, pick it to highlight and select that room. In the Element Properties palette, it indicates in the selection control that the element is a room. Check the pull-downs for the family and type, and you can see that they're not available. You can't edit type or change this to a different type of family. You can't load a family, select a type, or access the edit function for this type of element. In the Instance Parameters section at the bottom, review the available settings in the 4 groups of parameters: constraints, dimensions, identity data, and phasing. The Dimensions section will display the exact area and the perimeter, but the values are grayed out, and these are being calculated from the actual room size. The only way to change these values is to start moving walls. In the Identity Data section, if we just collapse dimensions and look at identity data, there are numerous fields here for parameters that could be linked to a room finish schedule. In the Name field, change the word Office to Meeting Room, and then pick Apply. You can pick Apply, or you can also just move your mouse out into the drawing area and pick a point, and that will also apply a change to an instance parameter. The room is still selected, and we can continue to make more changes if we'd like. The room tag associated with the room automatically updates with the new element property for the name instance parameter. This can be set from the tag or from the object being tagged. If I pick the room tag itself and then pick on the name to highlight it, I can change this, and we could call this a storage room if we'd like. And then pick outside, and if I select my room and I take a look under the identity data, that information is mirrored here as well. We're going to just close this and then hit Control Z to undo and take this room name back to Meeting Room. Switch to a default 3D view, and we're going to zoom in around the front door area where you can see 2 or 3 of the smaller windows. In here, that should do it. We're going to pick one of those windows, and in the Element Properties, Instance Parameters, for sill height, we're going to increase that sill height to 42 inches, and then pick Apply. And that one window has moved up, but the other windows of the same type have not been modified, since the parameter we changed was an instance parameter and not a type parameter. It's possible to change instance parameters on multiple objects at one time. You can pick this same window that you just modified, and then right-click and choose Select All Instances in Entire Project. It should show a 4 beside the Windows icon to indicate that you have 4 objects in the current selection set. If we look in the Properties pull-down here, the sill height parameter is blank this time, and that indicates that the value varies with the selected elements. Set this sill height to 30 inches, or 2.5 feet, and then just pick outside, and all of those windows will move down. I'm going to zoom back out, and then I'm going to drag a large selection window around the entire building. Pick the Filter tool on the selection panel of the ribbon, and then choose Check None. And that clears everything. Now put a check mark beside Windows, and then pick Apply or OK to close that dialog. And in the Properties palette, it tells us that we have multiple types selected. They're all the same category, they're all windows, but we have different families and different types. We're going to set that sill height to 42 inches, and then just pick outside or pick Apply, and all of the windows will move to that new sill height. Now let's zoom in around the front door again, and you'll notice that the window head is higher than the door head. And ideally they should align with each other, but we don't want to cut through the sill stone here between the brick and the block portions of the wall. Now we could edit the wall type and move the division between those materials lower in the wall, but we're going to work with wall types more in another class. So let's modify the Windows type parameter for its height and rename it appropriately. Pick one of the 24-inch windows, and then in the element properties, choose Edit Type. If you look in the Type Properties dialog under Dimensions, you can see a field here for height. And in the Type Properties dialog, we're going to set this height to 42 inches. Now pick the Rename button, and we're going to change this from 24 by 48 to 24 by 42 inches. And then pick OK. So the height says 42 inches, the description says 42 inches for the name. We're good to go. So now we can just pick Apply and OK to make that change. And when we close the dialog box and take a look at these windows, we can see that all of the 24-inch windows have resized to the new parameters. If you pick one of these windows and take a look in the Type Selector pull down, you can see the available types, and you can see that the original 24 by 48 window is no longer available. Let's try it again with the 36-inch windows, but this time we're going to retain the original type. Zoom or pan over until you can see one of the 36-inch windows, and then select it to view its element properties. Choose the Edit Type button to open the type properties, and we're going to duplicate this one. So we'll pick Duplicate, and we're going to make a new version called 36 by 42 inches, and we'll pick OK. Now we're going to set this height to 42 inches. We're going to pick OK to close that, and this one window has been renamed or reassigned the new parameter. It's now called a 36 by 42 inch type, but all of the other windows, the 36-inch windows, are still the same. So we're just going to zoom back a little bit so that we can pick one of these other 36-inch windows and then type SA and hit enter. And the type selector shows that we have 10 of these windows selected. With that selection in place, I'm going to reach into the type pull down, choose 36 by 42, and all of those windows have now been modified, and they're all using the same type. Let's go to the level 1 plan view, and we want to zoom into an area here where we can see two instances of both types of windows. So here's a couple of the 2-foot windows, here's a couple of the 3-foot windows. So I'll just zoom in and that will work fine. Now you can see that the sill element here at the bottom is running directly below the actual window sash, and it's situated almost flush with the exterior wall. We would like to inset those windows about 3 inches from the exterior brick face. If I pick one of these windows and then I view its element properties and pick Edit Type and change that window inset value here from 3/4 of an inch to 3.5 inches, and then pick Apply and pick OK, all of the windows of that type have now been modified. Now this one's inside out. Let's just pick this and press the space bar to get it to the correct orientation, and you can see that that window is shifted in that correct distance. We're going to make that same change to the other windows as well. So we'll just repeat that for the 24-inch windows. We can see that there are 4 here. I can pick any one of them, Edit Type, change the window inset to 3.5 inches, and then pick OK, and all of those windows have shifted in as per the new parameter setting for that window inset value. Alright, let's go into the next phase. We're going to bring in a couple of families. We're going to zoom into the washroom area and then go to the Insert tab on the ribbon and choose Load Family from the Load from Library panel. And in the Load Family dialog, browse to the Imperial Library. If it's not already open, it should be. And then we're going to go to Plumbing, and then Architectural, and then Fixtures, and then Water Closets. and we're going to bring in a toilet domestic 3D. And I'll pick open, and now we've added that to the drawing, but we haven't actually, we weren't in the middle of the command to load it or to actually insert an instance of it. So now we can either type CM to start the component command, or we can go back to architecture and then choose component. And here's the latest family that we've added. The toilet domestic 3D is showing here in the type properties pull down. And if I just pull my mouse into the area of the washroom, we can press our spacebar to rotate this in 90-degree increments, and we want to place it down here in the lower right corner. If I zoom in and select this, it will show some temporary dimensions, and I can use those temporary dimensions, and I want this to be measured from the inner face of this wall. I want this to be 18 inches. That's a minimum, 1.5 from an adjacent wall. And then the toilet itself, we want to place this so that the back of the toilet is 2 inches. There it is, 2 inches measured from the wall to the back of the toilet. And I'll just pull this over a little bit to get it out of the way. There. Now we're going to bring in a vanity. On the Architecture tab of the ribbon, this time we're just going to choose Component, and we're going to pick Load Family, and then we're going to go to Casework, and then Base Cabinets, and then we're going to pick a Vanity Cabinet Double Door Sink Unit, and I'll pick Open. And I'm going to bring this in, and you can see that as I get this close to the corner, it's going to snap in and cleverly align to the adjacent walls. And we'll just cancel to finish that. I'm going to pick this, and by default it added a 30-inch type, but there are more types, and we have several sizes, and we're going to change this to a 27-inch size. And then I'm going to pull this over, and I'll use the Align command to align this, but I'm not going to lock it. I'll just move it over to that position. Now we're going to add a countertop. It's a separate family, and I'll choose Component again, and then Load Family. I'll go to Casework, Countertops, and we want a vanity counter with a round sinkhole. So here we go, vanity countertop with round sinkhole, and I'll open this, and again we can pull this in and cleverly snap into that corner, and then just finish the command. Now this is much larger than the cabinet below, you can see that, and we're going to change this and reduce the size of our countertop by going to the properties in the dimensions value, and we have instance properties for this counter. So we're going to set the length to 28 inches, or 2 space 4, and we're going to change the sink location to 1 space 2, or half of that distance. If I apply, you can see it move over. Now we're going to switch to a 3D view, and I'm going to zoom down in and take a look at that vanity right here, and you can see that the countertop has been placed at the correct height on top of the cabinet. If we check the properties for our counter, there's no height in the instance parameters, but if I edit type, you can see that there is a default height in the type properties, and that's set at the correct height to sit on top of our cabinet. We'll go back to the plan view again, and we're still zoomed in that area, and now we're going to add a sink as well. So I'm going to start my component command, choose Load Family, and then we're going to go to the Casework again. Actually, no, it's in Plumbing Fixtures. So we'll go to Plumbing, Architectural, Fixtures, and Sinks, and we want a Sink Vanity Round. And we'll open this, and then I'm just going to reach in and pick a point here at the center of the opening, right there. And then we'll just finish that operation. And we can take a look in our 3D view again, and there's our sink sitting in that opening. All right, that's looking pretty good. We've got our counter, we have our sink in place. Let's go back to that level 1 view in our plan, and I want to just see if I can shift this around so that everything reads clearly. You always want to try to make sure that dimension text especially, but room tags as well, position where it's easy to read. Try to keep stuff from overlapping. And if that looks good, we're going to go over to our meeting room. Now, if there's a desk in this office still, or meeting room, we're going to get rid of that. And we want to bring in a conference table. If I go to my component tool and choose Load Family, and I take a look in Furniture, under Tables, we have a dining table, and we have a coffee table, and we have an elliptical table. Ooh, if that's big enough, that might be close. We have a rectangular table and a round table. We don't actually have a conference table. Let's go up one and another. And let's check in furniture systems. What's that? Shelving and pedestals and cubicles for an office environment. Still not quite what we're looking for. All right, let's pick cancel. There are domestic tables, but nothing suitable for a large meeting room table. Now, it would be possible to load one of those rectangular or elliptical or dining room tables and then create a new type. Just make oversized dimensions to generate a 12-foot version. And we can even rename the family by finding it in the project browser and then renaming it. This would be a good practice exercise, and if you'd like, you can definitely try that on your own. But we're going to bring in a table from Autodesk Seek instead. So from the Insert tab on the ribbon, go to the Seek search panel and type in Table and hit Enter. And this is going to open the Autodesk Seek website and let us find some tables here. Now we're going to switch over to another version of a table, and let's try the Bernhardt manufacturer. So I'll select Bernhardt here on the left. Wait for the website to load that page or that category, and here we have 33 entries from Bernhardt Design. And we're going to go down through, and this has occasional tables. Let's look for a conference table. I can type conference table or table conference, and then hit Enter. And we're going to take this back to the Bernhardt Design category again. And we're looking for one called Odeon. And here it is, Conference Table Odeon. So I'll select this, and you can take a look at it, get a little preview of it here. There's a nice color version of the table, the actual table in an office. And we're going to select this and then choose to download it to local. There it goes. And this is an RFA version, so I'm going to be able to just open it directly. As soon as it finishes downloading, I'll pick it. And Revit asks me if I'd like to upgrade it, and of course we do. And here's our table, and we're now in the family editor. So we're going to take a quick look at this. If you look at the title bar at first, you can see an RFA extension, and that lets you know that you're in the family editor. The ribbon looks a little bit different here than it does in the regular project editor. And if this is your first look at the family editor, we might want to take a look through some of the other views. Let's go to the reference level view, the plan view. And okay, all of the constraints are hidden. So let's just display those. We'll open our visibility graphic overrides, and I'll go to my annotation categories and choose to show annotation categories, and apply and OK. And there's the magic behind the parametric table and how we're going to change the sizes for the table. The green dashed lines, these are called reference planes, and these define critical locations. So the reference plane out here helps us to define the length. So we have a table length parameter, and this is a type parameter. If I select the dimension, you can see the label at the top. It says table length equals 8, and there are a number of different parameters available here. We're going to create a type for this by going into our properties, that button that says family types, and I'm going to create a new type. And at the moment it says at the top in the type pull down, it says not a type, load type catalog. Well, we're going to create two new types. So I'm going to pick new, and I'm going to create a type that is 96 inches, that's the current 8-foot length, by 48 inches. We can see that the table depth or the width is 4 feet. And then pick OK and apply, and we have our first type defined. Now we're going to create another type, and we'll call this one 120 inches by 48 inches, and pick OK, and we'll set the table length for this one to 10 feet and apply. We could even make one more, and I can make one called 144 inches by 48 inches and pick OK, and this will be the 12-foot version, and apply. And if I pick OK now, we've defined 3 new types for this table. Now we're going to load this into our project, so I'll choose Load into Project, and here comes our table. And as it comes in, I can press my spacebar to rotate it. I can also reach into my type pull down, and it's going to show these types, and I can choose my 10-foot version, and then rotate this and place it in the middle of the room. And I'll just press Escape to finish that command. And I'm going to move my room tag up away from the table, and that one is in place. If I select that table, we can change the size to a 96-inch version or a 144 or 12-foot version, just like that. If you'd like to make more changes, you can choose Edit Type, and this is where we would be able to change the width of the table or the depth of the table as well. Let's just cancel here, and we'll stop at that point. Now we're going to make a floor. Alright, we're going to zoom to fit in our first floor plan view, and then from the Build panel on the Architecture tab of the ribbon, choose Floor, and if you can either choose Floor or from the pull down choose Floor Architectural, either will start the architectural version. And we're going to start the floor and then use the Pick Walls tool. So I'm going to leave my offset at 0 and choose Extend into Wall, and then I'll choose Pick Walls, and I'm going to select my walls, and I can pick them one at a time. I can also do a chain selection by pressing Tab, that would also work. Or I can pick each like this, and it's going to go all the way around. Apply the sketch element to the outer face of the stud portion because we're extending into the wall. And now I can set the type that I want, and I can set this to be a wood joist 10-inch with ceramic tile. And then I'm going to finish this and just pick outside, and well, we see a gray floor, but we don't see any tiles. If I go to a 3D view, same deal. And it's because that particular floor type is not defined completely. It's not defined the material for the tile floor. So I'm going to select my floor, and then I'm going to change the type to a wood finish. And the wood finish does have the material assigned. We can also select that floor object, and then I'm going to change this to a steel bar joist with vinyl tiles on concrete, and that's going to give us a tile pattern. And we'll go back to a plan view again. So I'll go to my level 1 view, And now we have a tile floor in our building. All right, if you take a look, you can see that our desk and our table is correctly masking the floor. And if I move that table around, you can see that the table is hiding the tiles. Most objects that you place on top of a floor should hide the tiles. If we zoom in closely and take a look at our doors, you can see that our tiles are running right through the door panels. And there's a pretty easy change that we can make that will give you a chance to experiment just a little bit in the Family Editor that's going to allow us to mask the door panel so that it conceals the floor tiles as well. So we're going to pick one of these single 30-inch by 84-inch single flush doors and then choose Edit Family. Under Views, go to your floor plan, ground floor view, and make it active. Zoom in so you can see that door panel, and then go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon, and then from the Detail panel, use the Masking Region tool. And this takes us into a sketch environment. And again, we can create a sketch by drawing lines or by picking elements, or we can create a rectangle in this instance that goes from this corner to this corner. Now, after I trace that rectangular panel with a rectangular region, it shows 4 locks. If I lock this, and this, and this, now if I close that door, or if I change the size of the door by changing the type from a 30-inch to a 32-inch or a 36-inch, the masking region, which is the detail element that will hide the tiles, it will resize with the door, but only if these are locked. You have to lock these before you finish your sketch. Now I can finish my edit mode, and then we can load this into our project. We'll load this into Revit 1-3, and I'll pick OK. And it says that you're trying to load this family, but it already exists. What do you want to do? Well, I want to overwrite the old version with the new and improved version. And when I do so, now we see a solid opaque panel over top of our tiles. If I select this door, here's the test. I should be able to change this to another type or another size and have that masking region change as well, and it does. So I'll just take this back to the 30-inch by 84-inch door for now, and we'll zoom back out, and I believe that is as far as we need to go today. Now, because that change was assigned to the family, all of the different doors that are referencing that family are all using the masking region. So zoom back out, do a zoom to fit, and then save your project, back it up as usual, and we're going to be continuing in the next class with a discussion of levels and elevations, and we'll begin to lay out some views on sheets in preparation to finish up our first project. So have a good night, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. We're now going to take a look at sheet creation and drawing views. A construction document set contains all of the information required to supply clients, consultants, and building contractors with the necessary dimensions and notes to create your building design. A typical set of construction documents will contain a minimum of plan drawings, elevation drawings, and building section drawings. Larger or more complex projects may also include detail drawings, structural and electrical drawings, schedules for doors, windows, and room finishes, and even rendered perspectives. To create a set of drawings to document your design, you first need to create sheets, and then you'll add various drawing views and schedule views to those sheets. A set of sheets can be printed to hard copies or published to an electronic format such as DWF or PDF files. To add a sheet to your project and start laying out views, there are 2 methods for creating your first sheet. In the project browser, you can go to the Sheets category and then right-click and choose New Sheet. And this will open the new sheet dialog box where you can select one of the existing title blocks, or if the title block that you want, the sheet size that you want, is not listed, you can choose load. And when you load, it will go to the Load Family dialog in your default folder. This is going to US Imperial, and I'll just browse down, find my title blocks folder, and then I can select the sheet size that I'd like to use. So if I want a B size sheet, I'll just pick that one and pick Open, and now it's in our available list of sheets. I'm going to use my D size sheet and pick OK, and my first sheet has been created. We can also access new sheets by going to the View tab on the ribbon, and there's a Sheet Composition panel. And the Sheet Composition panel allows us to select this New Sheet tool to again open the same dialog where we can select the sheet size that we want and then load it or pick OK. I'm going to just pick Cancel since we already have one, and we'll take a look now at some of the information that's included with the title block. The title block on a sheet will display information about that project, including project name and project number, as well as information about the individual sheet, such as the drawing names, sheet number, and author. Project properties are found on the Manage tab of the ribbon. And if I go to Manage, and I take a look here under my Settings section, there is an icon here for Project Information. And if I choose Project Information, and I pull this down here, you can see that there are a number of fields that we can fill out here that will correspond to the fields in the title block. So we have a client name that says owner, and over here we have a field that says owner. If I change this client name to Zone Consulting Limited, which just happens to be the name of my company, and then pick OK, that name will appear in my title block. We can also fill out the information in a title block by zooming in and selecting this field and then just picking on that blue text, and it will create an editable field here where I can change the name. And we'll call this a commercial tower, and then just pick outside. Now if I go from here back into my properties by going to Manage, and then I choose my project information, that commercial tower has been added in this dialog box as well. And I'll just change this from tower to center and pick OK, and it makes that change. So we have a couple of different places where we can change that information, and in fact there's actually one more. If I select my title block again and I take a look in the Properties palette, under Identity Data we have information here, and we have a sheet name and a sheet number, and I can change this to sheet A101, and then that information will update. Under the Drawn By, we have a field here for author, and I can change this in either location as well. And if I'd like to put my initials here, I can just type in here and put KB. If I'd like to say that I'm the one that checked it, I have two choices. I can do it here, or I can pick right on the title block and set that here as well. The scale setting is currently blank, and that's going to be generated by adding a view. And when I add a view to the sheet, if I say that it's 1/4 inch equals a foot, that's the scale that will appear here. Some of the information, such as the project number and the issue date, that's not available here as an instance parameter. It is being populated by fields, though, that we can get at by going back into that project information. So if we see a value that we can't get at in the Properties palette, then you know that you need to look in the Project Information dialog box to add that information. So our project number, for example, we'll say that this is 2015-0015, and pick OK, and that's going to be added here. So that's how you can fill out your title block. And we'll just say that this will be a floor plan for the name of the drawing. So if we're going to say that it's a floor plan, I guess we'd better add a floor plan view. So I'm going to zoom back, and we'll look now at adding a view to our sheet. You can add one or more views to a sheet. You can put plans, elevations, 3D views, sections, details, and even renderings. A single view may only be placed on a single sheet, but it is possible to create duplicate views to place those on additional sheets. So you could have a first floor structural and a first floor electrical and a first floor interior design. And as long as you duplicate the floor plans and give them a new name, you'll be able to put the different names, named views, on multiple sheets. If I would like to add a floor plan from my level 1 view to this sheet, the easiest way to do it is to select the view that you want and then just pick and drag and drop onto the sheet. And you'll see a frame indicating the overall extent of the view, and if you just pick a point, it's going to add that view to the sheet. You can also display or add the view to the sheet by going to the View toolbar, and if I just delete here and we go back to the View toolbar, we also have an option here to Place View. And Place View will show a little dialog box where you can select the view that you want, this floor plan or this elevation, and then you can choose to add the view to the sheet. And again, that's going to show this blue frame indicating the extent of the view, and you can pick a point to add that view to the sheet. The size of the view relative to the sheet is going to be dependent on the view scale. So if I go back to level 1 by going to the browser and I take a look at this scale here, we've looked at this before in that the scale affects the size of the annotation. If I change this from 3/8 of an inch equals a foot to 3/16 of an inch equals a foot, the size of these dimensioned and text elements appears to increase. In reality, the size of the view relative to that sheet is decreasing. And if I go back to that sheet now, and I can go to my browser, expand that category, and then double click on sheet A101 floor plan to make it current, that view is now much smaller. And we can pull this up. We can access the size of that view without going back to the level 1 view. We can just select this view, and we can change the scale here in the properties palette as well. And if I change this to 1/4 inch equals a foot, it's going to get a little larger. And we can position this on the sheet where we'd like. Once I've added this on a single sheet, I can't add it on a second sheet. If I want to add that view, there's one other way that we can do it. And if I right-click on a sheet name, there's also an option here to add view. And if I pick Add View, it shows that same little list of views dialog that appeared when I chose the Add View from the Sheet Composition panel. And I can pick that floor plan level 1 and choose Add View to Sheet, and then reach up here and select a position to place that view. The size of the view relative to the sheet is dependent on the view scale setting. We can modify it in the individual view. You can modify it by selecting the view and then accessing the view scale in the properties palette. If we want to modify the scale of a view on the sheet in the context of the sheet, we can either pick it and change the value here, or you can activate the view, and you can activate a view by double-clicking it. If I double-click this view, you can see that the sheet elements are grayed out. And now I can select the individual elements within this view. I can also access things like the detail level or the shading style. I could make this a black and white view or consistent colors. And we'll just set this back, and we can access the scale now from a pop-up menu here, and we could make this 3/8 of an inch equals a foot to enlarge that view. And now if I want to move the view around on the sheet, I'm going to activate the sheet again. So we double click inside the view to leave the paper space or the sheet space, and we double click outside the sheet to get back into the area where we can either select the title block or we can select the overall view and then move it by just dragging it around on the sheet. Let's make this 1/4 of an inch equals a foot again. And apply, and I'll move this up. And let's zoom in a little bit closer. Now the overall size of the sheet is going to be linked as well to the size of the crop region on the view. And if you have your dimensions way outside, if you have things like the elevation tags visible and they're out away from the building, it's going to enlarge the overall area of the view, and a portion of the crop region may even extend outside the view. If I activate this view and turn on my crop region, you can see that this is going to be hanging out over the sides. We can adjust this and enlarge it or make it smaller. And I like to keep the crop regions in close to the building. So we have the annotation crop region visible, that's the outer dotted line, plus the inner crop region, and we'd like to keep those in tight to the building if possible. So I'm going to just turn that crop region back off now. We're going to crop the view, we're going to hide that crop region, and then I'll double click outside the view to activate the sheet. If you want to display a different name for the sheet, or a different name on this title, this is currently referencing a level called Level 1. And if I rename this level by right-clicking and choosing Rename, and I say that it is First Floor, and pick OK, it will ask me if I'd like to rename the corresponding level in views. I'll choose Yes. And when I do so, it's going to change the name on the title below the view as well. The title is going to show the scale that's being generated by the view scale, and it's going to show the name of the view based on the actual view name or the level name. I can select this view, and I can take a look under Identity Data, and we have a view name, and then we have another field for title on sheet. And if your view name is called O1 First Floor, and you want the title on the sheet to read First Floor Plan, then you use this title on sheet field for that purpose. And I'll just add First Floor Plan and pick Apply, and now that extra information is added. If I delete the title on sheet field, it will just go back and show the default view name. What I'd like to do next is to position this title. If you pick the view title itself, first I can pick right on the title, and I can drag this around. If I have changed the title on sheet value for the view, I can't change the name of it here. If I select this and I delete that title on sheet value, and now we're going to move this and resize the title line. The title line is going to be based on the extent of the view, and you might draw it like that, but you might also like to keep this much shorter and then just position it below the view with a short line. If you want to move the title, you pick on the title and you drag it to a new location. And I like to line mine up so that the edge of the little circle here is basically in line with the wall on the outer left edge. If I want to reduce this line, I can't pick the title. This lets me move it, but it doesn't let me move or adjust that line. To adjust the line, I pick on the view itself. And when I pick on the view itself, now that enables a shape handle here, and I can drag this back to make it shorter. So if I pick it, I can move it around. If I pick the view, I can change the length of that line, and then I can move this into the position that I want. And we're going to go back and change that view to indicate our title on sheet will be first floor plan again. And then just pick outside. If you add more than one view on a sheet, let's make another sheet. I'm going to create a new sheet. We'll use the same size. Let's see, I think I was using a D size. And I'll pick OK. And the second sheet is going to follow the numbering convention from the first sheet. If I called my first sheet A1, the second sheet will be called A2. If I make another, it will be A3. If I name them A-101, then the next sheet is going to be A-102. These are going to increase incrementally. So with this view active, I can add an elevation view. And again, the easiest way I think to add a view to a sheet is to just pick it and then drag and drop it onto your view. You can adjust the extents of it if you need to. I'm going to move this title over a little bit, and then I'll pick my view to reduce the length of the title flyer. If I'd like to call this not south, but south elevation, then I'm going to pick this view, go back into my identity data, and under title on sheet, I'll say that this is south elevation, and then pick outside to affect that change. We'll zoom back a little bit. Now I'm going to make another view. And if I put the south elevation, then we'll go east elevation next. And we'll add the east elevation here. And as I add the second view to the sheet, it's going to want to align with the first sheet. And actually, those are the title markers that are aligning. And I can pick a point. And because this sheet, or this view has a different scale, it's a vastly different size. Let's see, up here we were using 3/8 of an inch equals a foot. I'll pick this view, and I'm going to go back to the scale, and I'll set that to 3/8 of an inch equals a foot as well. And apply. And now you can see that this is an instance where the crop region is very large, and the elevation lines are very large relative to the building. And it's the elevation lines that are making this so large. So I'm going to activate the view by double-clicking, pick this line, and then drag this in next to the building. I'll pick this line and drag this in next to the building. And then I'm going to just double-click out here to deactivate it. And actually, let's change the visual style. We'll make this shaded. I can double-click and make it shaded here, and then double-click outside. Or I can select the view, and in the Properties palette, I can choose Graphic Display Options and Edit. And we can also make the change here. So I can set this back to a hidden line. We're back to shaded. And pick OK. And now I'm going to move this title over, and the title is going to find those other titles and help me align them perfectly. I'll pick my view and reduce the width of that line. And now I'm going to move the view itself over. And I can just pick this view, and I can drag the view. Now when you drag the view, it's going to drag the title line with it. And then I can pick my title and move this back. And ideally, what I'd like to see happen is the edge of this wall in line with the edge of this wall. And I can just pick these views and eyeball it like this. But there's another tool that allows us to help align features or align multiple views on a sheet. And if I move this down a little bit, and I'll just move it off as well to illustrate how we're going to do this. On my sheet composition panel, there's an option here for a guide grid. We can also access a guide grid by clearing my selection and then looking down in the other setting below the sheet heading in our Properties palette, and I can create or select a guide grid here. Now if I haven't created one yet, I can't select it, so I need to create a new one. And this guide grid, we can name this or just take the default, and then I'll pick OK, and it creates this framework or this graph paper-like appearance over top of my view. If I select this, I can access the properties and I can say that I want this to be a 2-inch spacing or a 4-inch spacing as required. And then I'm going to, once I get this to a reasonable spacing, I'm going to use it to help me align these views on a sheet. The grid itself, I can reduce this and bring this in to align with the border if I'd like, or I can leave it hanging over, which will make it easier to select. And then I'm going to just zoom in, and it just gives me a little framework so that I know that 1 to the 3rd line in, that's where I'd like to align the side of my building, or the 2nd line in. And so I'll pick my view and then use the nudge key to nudge this over until the wall is in line with the grid. I'll go down and select my next view, and then I'll nudge it over until it's in line with the same edge. And at that point, if I'd like, I can turn the grid off or remove it. If I set this guide grid for the sheet to none and pick apply, it's going to hide it. Now that I've created the guide grid and I've added it, I can bring it back. If I need to see it, I can just enable the guide grid again. If I make another sheet with the same size paper for another set of elevations, or for my sections, I can start bringing in my views here, and I'll bring in my north view, and I'll bring in my west view, and we'll set the scale for that west view to 3/8 of an inch equals a foot, and pull this around. And now I can go to my guide grids, and I can enable the same guide grid that was on sheet 1, and I can enable it here as well. And then I can pick this view, and I can move it over, and the wall on the other sheet was in line with grid line number 2. And this one was also in line with grid line number 2. And by referencing the number of squares in or the number of squares up, you can match up a series of views so that when you turn through your sheets from sheet A1 to sheet A2, the elevations will appear in the same place. If you have a first floor, a second floor, and a third floor, all on different sheets, when you go from one sheet to the next, it's nice if the plan is actually in the same spot on each of the sheets. You can eyeball it and get it close, but these guide grids do certainly help to make it easier to align them perfectly. They won't plot. You can leave them visible. Personally, I prefer to use them, but then turn the display off after I have them set up. So again, here we'll want to make sure that we're using a consistent detail level and a consistent shading style for all of our views. So either make them all shaded or all hidden line. And I'm just going to pick this one, and we'll go to our graphic display options, and I'll set that to be shaded and apply. I'm going to pick my title flyer, and I'll move that over, also in line with the building. I'll pick this title flyer and move it over in line with the building. And now I'm going to reduce the length of these lines by picking the view and then picking this little control grip, and there it is. Now it's exactly the same length as the one above. And that's going to allow us to organize our sheets in a nice fashion. All right, so that's how we could switch in and out of views, how we can adjust the position of the views, and also the position of the titles and the length of those little title lines. We've looked at filling out the information in our title block. Some of the information is going to carry through from one sheet to the next. The project name and the project number are going to be properties that will fill out automatically. Different people can work on different sheets, and so the author is a property that belongs to individual sheets, and it's going to vary. So if you have 8 sheets in your project, you need to come in and put your initials on each sheet. Don't just leave it blank. Same thing with the issue date. The scale is being generated from the scale on the views. So check your title blocks in each view and make sure that you're getting all of the information that you need. All right, I'm going to zoom back out. I believe that's everything that we're going to do with our sheets so far. You can rename these sheets as well. You can rename or renumber by right-clicking on a sheet name, and you'll have options to choose a rename. When you rename a sheet, you can rename the number and the name for that sheet. All right, we're going to stop there and we'll take a quick break, and when we come back we're going to carry on with our first assignment project, the commercial building, and we'll be adding a second floor, adding another set of elements for that floor, and then we'll create some sheets and start laying out our views.